John Cliver, Bruce Narsini with the Houston Floodway Coalition, and once again, you can go to HoustonFloodway.org. You know, folks, again, I just think this is criminal what the city of Houston has done, because we're talking about, we talk about eminent domain, and a lot of people are upset about the Trans-Texas Corridor. It's the same issue, except the city won't even give you money for your property. I mean, they've just devalued it. They said that your property is in this floodway, this new floodway they've created, and because it's in the floodway, it's worthless. And too bad. And we're talking about people who have had their life savings, have owned property forever. I met with a couple of business people. Their families have had businesses in part of this floodway district for generations, and now, their property that was once valued at several $1 million, their buildings property, is worth nothing. Senior citizens who have homes that they lived in thought that was going to be their nest egg or their inheritance to their children one day, worth nothing. And we're talking about 10,000 properties or more. Bruce and John, how did this? What was the genesis behind this? What created? And I know kind of the answer myself, but I want you to explain it to the folks. And Bill White has been talking about how this is lowering insurance for everyone. But talk about where this started from and what has happened politically.
Oh, basically, this was the ordinance was changed in October 1 of 2006, ostensibly to solve the flooding problems in the city of Houston. But 60% of the flooding occurs outside the floodway in the city of Houston. So to sit back and say that's going to solve our flooding problems is just clearly not the case. The city of Houston will tell you happily that the flood and drainage system has been neglected for 50 years.
It has been.
So yes, and they'll admit it, without issue. They know it. So basically, it's their quick fix.
Right.
And there's some other little nuggets, some advantages they'll have, because whenever you come into property and take away its utility, you devalue it. So whenever you devalue it, that sets you up quite nicely to come in and through eminent domain pluck up the properties that you want for pennies on the dollar. So they've effectively introduced a false economic condition whereby which they can profiteer from their own ordinance.
Yeah, so I don't want to be a cynic or make any accusations here, but just kind of to clarify what you're saying is a city could come in and say this area now is in this floodway. The property isn't worth anything. At some point later in time, somebody comes in and says, hey, I'll take you out of your property. They make you a deal. You realize you're up against it. You've lost in all your appeals on this, so you sell the property. And then, lo and behold, the ordinance gets changed one day later, and suddenly some people can build on that property. That could be one area, because a lot of these properties we're talking about are now in areas that are highly sought after for people to live in inside the loop. Secondly, some people who are just environmentalists who want lots of green space just say, let's just take these people's property and mow it down over time. We'll have lots of parks and parkways. And their reasoning behind all of this is that what they want to do is stop new construction, in essence, because they want the water to flow unimpeded so it can flow through.
The phrase that they use is sheet flow conveyance.
Yes.
And that's whenever they're busily beating the drum as it relates to how it's going to solve the flooding problems.
Right.
But there's another insidious aspect about it, and that is the linear parks. And if the city, by using the floodway, the firm map, in conjunction with the ordinance, can come in and devaluate property, that sets them up nicely to be able to effectively, through eminent domain, take citizens' property.
Right. And so they can have their green space, their whatever they want, or
it's great for the city, except for the person, except for your citizen that owns property.
Right, and it's not even a case. And again, in terms of public, not just use, but public good. And of course, we had that Supreme Court decision. A lot of people are still unhappy with, and we don't have the strongest eminent domain laws in Texas to protect citizens. But even if a person said, okay, buy me out, and we're not talking again. Folks, we're not talking about people who are living in areas that constantly flood. We're talking about a lot of these homes are in areas that have never flooded, right?
That's precisely right.
Never flooded. In 100 years, they've never flooded for a lot of these 10,000 properties. But the city has said, well, you might flood, and we got to make this.
Instead of looking at the risk map, which is a map that Harris County uses, it shows the historical flooding. In other words, places that flood once a year,
right,
every 5 years, 10, 15, 20, 50 years, 100 years, they have precise maps of coordinates of every place that floods
right
in Harris County. They're not using that. They elected. It was their choice to use, it was the city's choice to use the floodway maps.
Right, and those are much expanded from those areas that normally flood. So even if a person came along that wanted to sell their property, the city isn't offering anything here. I mean, even if a person wanted to offer. I mean, Bruce, you said you're one of the property owners, and John, you're one of the property owners. Even if the city would take you out, they're not offering anything.
Yeah, indirect takings, which is exactly what it is. It's a taking of value without changing title. So
right,
here's another insidious part. I've got to pay taxes and maintain my property, even though it dropped 94%. So it's a double or triple whammy any way you look at it.